Okay. Can you guys still hear me right? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Slooh Live show will begin in 3 minutes. 3 minutes and counting. Okay, Slooh Live show will begin in about 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Slooh show will begin in about 1 minute. 1 minute. Slooh Live show will begin in 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Hi everyone, this is Patrick Palucci. It's October 23rd, Tuesday, and we're here today to give you a live coverage of two comets that are converging in the night sky. I'm here today with the great longtime Slooh friend Bob Berman and Astronomy Magazine columnist, as well as outreach coordinator from Slooh, Paul Cox. We'll be providing a live feed of two comets that are actually in the same field of view. The comets are 168P Hergenrother and Comet C slash 2012 J1 Catalina. These two comets were actually been showing some brightness. The 168P Hergenrother has been tracked by Slooh members, and they one particular member, Maynard Pittendray, I hope I pronounced his last name right. Paul, do you know Maynard's last name? How do you pronounce it?
I believe that's right. I don't have the spelling in front of me, I'm afraid, Pat.
Okay,
Yeah.
no problem. Well, Maynard, thank you very much. He brought this to our attention that these two comets were going to be coming in the same field of view, and that's a rarity. So what we're going to be doing today is Paul is actually robotically controlling our observatory in the Canary Islands. We'll be screen sharing in those images into the Hangout box here, but if you want to watch the program, you can actually watch it on Slooh.com. On the Slooh.com homepage, you can actually control the feeds of our observatories by clicking those little arrow boxes. You can pin photos right out of the reticle viewer, we call it, and you can also see the Google Plus Hangout box where we're all talking and conversing. So that's probably your best bet. We also have the Slooh conversation box there as well. And that's where I'll be monitoring for questions. I know some of you hang out in the Google Plus area of our page or the YouTube channel, which is fine. You can do that as well. But questions posted in that area, we can't monitor all those areas. So the Slooh conversation box on the Slooh.com homepage is where questions will be answered at the time of watching this. So right now, Paul's working on these feeds. Bob, while we're getting started here, I just want to let them know that the weather in Canary Islands right now is not great. It's very high wind conditions, and unfortunately, we had to keep one of our observatories closed due to its past its limit. Although we were able to get what we call our T2 high mag scope up and running in these conditions. So that's what we're going to be looking at today with this live feed. Bob, why don't we talk more about comets in general to give people an idea of what comets are, and maybe you can differentiate that between an asteroid, and talk about the uniqueness of this event while we work on the feeds themselves for the broadcast.
Sure, Pat. There's two aspects. One is the gut, the visceral thing about comets, and the other is the science. Now, as we look and we see the comet live, one of the two comets, if we get our wide field going, you'll see both of them in the same field of view, and that's what makes this event so special, because when have you seen two comets in the same field of view of a telescope? The answer is never. This is extremely rare. Look at that comet with the tail. Now, there's something about comets that touches the human soul. We could do the science, we will do the science, and say that comets are balls of ice, and when the ice, well, it doesn't melt because you can't have liquid in space, but when it turns to vapor, the solar wind blows that comet tail away from the sun, always pointing directly away from the sun, and produces this magnificent sight that, for some reason, touches the human soul or spirit. Asteroids are just small chunks of rock or iron or some nickel in it, and they don't have tails. So they're two very different animals, but either of them can pass near Earth. Either of them can actually collide with Earth. So because of that, both comets and asteroids have changed our history and changed the diary, the journal of life on Earth. Comets alone are fun to look at. Asteroids are not fun to look at. They're just little dots, but comets are. So the idea of getting two comets in a single field of view, that's why we're here tonight.
So, Paul, are we looking at, is that the close-up of the Hergenrother comet that we're looking at right now that you've got screen shared in?
Yeah, the brighter of the two is Comet 168P Hergenrother. We did actually have a view right at the very beginning of the show with both comets in the same field of view. That was in our T2 wide field view, but the problem is with that, it's such a small telescope, and although it has a very wide field of view, the second comet, 2012 J1 Catalina, is very faint. Now, I will point that out later to people because we have got another one of those views coming up. But we were really relying, as you said, Pat, tonight on our half-meter telescope tonight, because that was the telescope with the big field of view and the sensitivity to be able to catch the far dimmer 2012 J1 Catalina comet. So just to let you know what we've got though on the schedule, so this one, and the brighter of the two, it's very distinctive, has that kind of quite long coma now, which is a bright patch at the front of it. That's Comet 168P Hergenrother. Then the following image will be 2012 J1 Catalina, and then we'll have an image where nothing will show up in the T2 high mag telescope, but people will need to look at the T2 wide field, and I will point out to them, you'll easily be able to spot Hergenrother, but I'll have to point out which small fuzzy dot is Catalina. So
that's interesting. So what I'm doing right now, guys, is I'm going to actually pin out a photo of the Hergenrother comet using the Pinterest. So you can do that right off the Slooh homepage if you like. And that's a pretty big tail, isn't it, for a a comet. Is that typical, Paul or Bob, of a tail of a comet that we're seeing on this Hergenrother?
Well, they can be very different from each other. Comet tail, often there are two tails. There's a dust tail and an ion or plasma tail caused by different processes. Some comets, like Comet West back in 1976, had both tails were very distinct. Sometimes there's only one tail. And sometimes the comet gets bright enough to be seen with the naked eye, parading even over city skies. We last had that here in the Northern Hemisphere with Comet Hale-Bopp back in 1997, and we're hoping to have that again 1 year from now with Comet Ison. That could be a comet that may be one of the brightest comets we've seen in decades. Tonight's comet can only be seen through a good telescope, and that's what we're doing.
Actually, Hergenrother, just over the last probably week, has just come within limits. Reportedly, a lot of people are reporting it's as bright as magnitude 8, which is just within the realms of a binocular view. And some people have reported that. So the image that's coming up now, I'm actually sharing the mission, what we call the mission interface. Now, this is what Slooh members use to look at all of the live missions. And it just gives you an ability to kind of zoom in and pan around a bit more. But they're the same images that we're showing on the homepage tonight. One of the interesting things with Comet Hergenrother has been this really unexpected roller coaster ride of brightness that it's put on over the last month for us. And literally only a couple of days ago, it was when we were doing the marathon, there were reports that night, on Saturday night, that Hergenrother, its nucleus, had split in two. Now, we imaged it the following night. We did a special show on Sunday night trying to look at that in detail, and we couldn't see that it had split. But interestingly, on Saturday night, when we saw the first image of it, as soon as I saw it, I said to everybody, something's happened. Something had changed. The coma had almost kind of doubled in length. And also, we saw a minute ago the tail. We can see that it's got a lot broader than it was. So we still think that something else is going on up there, but we're still not sure. But we are going to be monitoring it every single night with Slooh members, so keep your eyes open, really.
So Paul, are we rotating back and forth on the feeds a little bit? So we're you said in the next T2 wide field view, you think we probably will get both comets in the same field?
Yes, we will, but literally I will have to point out this particular comet. So the comet we're looking at the moment on the home page is best viewed in a T2 high mag telescope. Here it is. It says fuzzy patch. So this is Comet 2012 J1 Catalina, and it is a lot fainter, obviously, than the last one that we saw. Now, in the in the T2 wide field telescope, are pointed out to. In fact, now's a good time for me to point it out to you. These three stars, look at these three stars that I'm pointing at now. You've got three bright stars in a row, and then this little dot just to the left of it, that is the comet. Now, that's going to be even more difficult to see when I give you in the next set of images, and these are all live images tonight. I've kind of centered the T2 telescopes between the two comets, so you're going to be able to see this little group of stars. So it's kind of a squashed diamond shape here. These will be off down to the left, and you'll just be able to see the small dot, which is this comet, but you will be able to see Hergenrother quite clearly in the left. But what I'll do is I'll screen share in a separate image so I can zoom in on it and show you the comet very specifically. So.
Yeah, well, so if you're on the Slooh. Oh, go ahead, Bob.
I was going to say that's really a jolly good job, because to see two comets at one time is absolutely amazing. They're traveling in somewhat different directions, in fact, quite different directions. So two comets in a single field of view. This is very close to a historic first.
Absolutely. If you go to the Slooh.com homepage, feel free to ask any questions to Paul, myself, or Bob in the Slooh Conversations box. I'll try to monitor it through the show today as we look at both of these two comets traveling together. I'm also going to be inviting in to the Hangout with us is going to be Tariq Malik from Space.com. He's going to be joining us shortly on the panel, and we're going to talk more about the comet as well. So I'm going to invite Tariq right now as Bob or Paul kind of jumps in and maybe shows us what's going on.
Well, Paul, continue, Paul.
Well,
Go ahead.
Bob, I was going to pick up on that point you just made actually, because I know you had a couple of press inquiries today saying, look, why is this a rare event? And one of the things that interested me was you've been into astronomy a hell of a lot longer than I have, and I saw your response to it, and you were saying, I can't ever remember when this has happened. And that, I think, more than anything, the fact that Bob Berman hadn't seen this particular kind of phenomenon before kind of smacked to me just how rare this is. People, I don't think, are truly understand how small a telescope's field of view is. So anything that goes on within it, to have multiple objects or multiple events occurring within a single image, is really quite rare anyway.
Yes.
Right.
And then add to that the comet's growing history, growing in our minds and our understandings in altering life on Earth. We now know that either a comet or an asteroid let us mammals come into existence, or at least dominance, 65 million years ago. We know one of those two probably was the cause of the great extinction 251 million years ago, although there are some other thoughts about that. And that there's even the thought that our oceans are due to comets bringing water to the early Earth. So we may owe everything to comets. So when they pass by, they're more than disinterested passers-by and intruders. These have interfaced with Earth in many ways, bringing us harm, bringing us evolution, bringing us probably the oceans. And so when we look at them, it's perhaps no surprise that we feel some deep connection with them. There's something about comet tails. We were discussing this with one of the reporters who called. Which are the events that get everybody excited, even if they don't know anything about astronomy? Well, a total solar eclipse, like the one that we're going to be covering on November 13th, a great display of the northern lights, such as the kind that Slooh covered last March up in central Alaska. And then there's a comet, probably third of all of that, of the events that touch the human soul. For reasons that are not scientific. Nobody knows why people react that way to comets, but we do.
Excellent. Well, joining us right...
Pat, may I just...
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Paul. Go ahead.
I've got to interrupt just while this image is up. All right, I'm very sorry, Tarek. I won't steal your thunder in a minute, but just while this image is up, on the home page, you need to be looking at the T2 Wide Field Telescope. Now, here it is. This is the image with both comets in it. This is our smallest telescope, but largest field of view. So, unfortunately, the second comet doesn't show up very brightly. But here it is. This is Hergenrother over here on the left, and the smaller comet is just showing up literally as a fuzzy star. So down here where I'm pointing, you've got 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars, and then you've got this tiny little dot. Now I'm going to zoom in very quickly on that tiny little dot, and even with this image, you'll be able to see that, look, there's the 1 star, 2 star, 3 star. This one here, it doesn't look the same as the others, does it? It looks slightly smudgy. Well, that's right. 2012 J1 Catalina. And unfortunately, the half-meter telescope would have got these in the same field of view but it would have shown the small tail that Catalina's got as well. So it's such a shame that the wind has got the better of us. So sorry to steal the introduction away from Tarek.
Yes. Tarek, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. This is pretty amazing. These two comets together. Yeah,
I know. It's pretty fascinating stuff. So we're with Tarek Malik, managing editor over at space.com. Tarek, thanks for coming on. This is actually your second time you've joined us. So thanks for coming back on. We didn't scare you off the first time, I guess.
No, it's great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Okay, cool. So Tarek, what's your initial thoughts on this event?
Well, it's amazing that not only do you get one comet, which, as Bob mentioned earlier, is just amazingly cool, but you get two for the price of one in the same view. I mean, it's a comet on its own is always just a wonderful sight to see. I remember, Bob, I remember Hyakutake before that on the beach in Los Angeles, and just getting a chance to get a preview for ISON next year is almost a year ahead of time is great.
Now, did you really see Hyakutake from Los Angeles?
From the beach in Malibu.
I see.
actually, when it
Could
was
could
at
you
its peak brightness.
see its tail from there, even through the light pollution?
Very slightly. Now, the part in Malibu that we were at was very remote on the beach, so it was really dark at that time.
I
And then
see.
we also drove up into the hills too on a separate night to get an even better view.
That had
So,
some tail, didn't it? That stretched across almost 90 degrees of the sky. That was an amazing comet.
yeah, it was. And we could see it even from the center of the city in Los Angeles. We could still see it in the tail.
That's great. So if you're just joining us, we're tracking two comets here live on Slooh. The observatory is actually located in the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa, for those of you who don't know. Paul's in the UK. He's our outreach coordinator. He's actually controlling the Slooh telescopes right now. We have Bob Berman, longtime Slooh editor, but you might know him from Astronomy Magazine columnist and author of many books, including The Sun's Heartbeat. And we have Tarek Malik, managing editor over at space.com, joining us. So we appreciate everyone coming on as we track these comets. What's unique about these two things is it's happening in the same field of view. We know space is so vast, but I believe, Paul, you said that the distance between these two objects is actually about, what, 150 million miles apart, something like that?
Yeah, now that was an absolute estimate. I looked at the kind of three-dimensional inner solar system, and I really took the Earth's orbital diameter as a kind of measuring stick, if you like, between the position of these two comets. And yeah, about 160 to 180 million miles apart.
Yeah.
Now
so
that we're
it's
looking at comets, let me ask Tarek, since you obviously love comets, I can hear it in your voice, what has been your, and because Comet Ison a year from now, which you mentioned, may prove to be a stunner for the world, what has been your favorite comet over time, over your life?
Well, I have to. We've seen several of them come and go. McNaught was a great one, but Hyakutake was the first one that, as an astronomy student, I actually actively sought it out with friends, and we had that beach party, and it was a very personal kind of look at the comet, as opposed to tracking it for space.com or something else, and it was just a really just amazing a crystallization, I would say, of sky watching for me. So that one is probably my favorite. I learned that you could see comets with binoculars, which I didn't know at that time. Really telescopes, and it was just a sight to see.
Oh, that's awesome. So you guys, just a quick note that all the free programming that Slooh produces is basically funded by membership. We put on shows weekly covering all different types of topics. Paul actually did, believe it or not, an 11-hour straight astronomy day show, which I'm still blown away he pulled off. And he did it basically with very little help from me or Bob, although Bob did help out a little bit. So it's a pretty amazing feat, a very amazing feat. And, again, on the Slooh.com homepage, members actually get to control our telescopes from the Canary Islands. So you not only get to go off and explore the solar system or galaxies or nebulae or what have you, you can also interact with members worldwide. And all that helps to fund the free program that we produce on the homepage. In fact, our next show is already counting down, and Tarek and I were actually talking about this. We're going to do something fun with Hunter's Moon and Fright Night because it's close to Halloween, and we're kind of putting something together for that. So it's going to be fun for that. But we're also doing, a huge event coming up that Bob's going to be on site for, the total solar eclipse down in Australia. So it's we do a wide range of shows, and these shows are all produced free to the public. So yeah, please do consider that membership. It does help. You guys, we got it looks like about 10 minutes left in the broadcast right now. Bob, what else could you tell us about comets that we don't know? Maybe a fun fact.
Well, comets contain, some of them at least, cyanogen, which is a toxic gas. So that in 1910, when Comet Halley was scheduled to pass very close to Earth, and there was another great comet earlier in the year, in 1910, there were fears that we being Earth, would pass through the comet's tail, and that all life on Earth would go extinct from the poisonous gases from the comet. So I mentioned earlier that comets may have brought us life, because comets are now known to contain amino acids, the building blocks of life, but they've also caused a lot of awe and fear. And you know in history how the Chinese beheaded the court astronomer who didn't predict a comet, or where a comet came and wasn't predicted in time, and stuff like that. So they have a long and very speckled history so far as humans go. And I'm seeing now that Paul has up a Slooh image showing both comets in the same field of view. And I might mention that they're passing in opposite directions. They're orbiting the sun in almost perfectly opposite directions.
So, and Hergenrother in our images, because we're going to track this throughout the night for Slooh members, Hergenrother is actually heading kind of north, this is actually northwest, but to the right in this particular image. And little 2012 J1 Catalina is heading in the total opposite direction down to the southeast.
Oh, it's wild. Hey, Paul, I was just curious. Are you imaging this past the 30-minute mark, or no? Or you stop imaging it?
No, I have stopped this one, but I've got another bout of them coming up at 2 o'clock as well. So.
Okay, I was going to maybe extend the show a little bit. But
and did we also mention that the comets, during this very show, is when the comets are passing closest to each other? So it's not an accident.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why that we've got this show on a little bit earlier than we would normally do a show as well. So.
Now I'm monitoring the Slooh conversation box here, so I was going to answer some of these questions if I can pull it up here really quick. I think we discussed this earlier, guys, about the magnitude of the comets. Maybe Paul, you could tell people what the magnitude is, and maybe do we know the distance from Earth on these? You said it's about 160 million miles, right? Something like that. Or is that the distance between them?
That's between the two. I don't actually have them the measurements with me from Earth at the moment, but there are varying reports on Hergenrother's brightness. The official one is about 14, but visual observers, and I think you will have all seen from the images tonight, have been estimating at about magnitude 8, whereas the one that we're looking at the moment, 2012 J1 Catalina, that is 13.9, I think it is at the moment, and that to me looks like a realistic figure for the image that we're seeing tonight.
And just for our listeners to get an idea of what that means, magnitude 14 essentially is the same brightness as Pluto, which is a tiny, insignificant piece of garbage that's only 2/3 the size of our moon, and lies out at the edges of the solar system, and of which we think so little that we've demoted it. So this comet is as faint as Pluto. What Paul is saying, that estimates of the brightness have ranged from, I think you said between 8 and 14. That's 6 magnitudes. Yeah. That happens to be a difference of 250-fold. So this is no small difference in brightness. This shows how weird comets can get and how their brightness can flare and change. David Levy, the famous comet discoverer and a colleague of mine at Astronomy Magazine, famously said that comets are like cats. They both have tails, and they both do exactly what they want.
As they please.
Yes.
Guys, I have some questions in here on the conversation box, and then maybe Tarek, you can jump in here in a second. But someone had a question about membership on Slooh, and they wanted to know if they actually got the chance to control the telescopes, or you just look at images. And the answer to that question is you actually control our telescopes. You can enter in your own coordinates. You can go on a drop-down box.
Pat, I can show this in 2 minutes. Yeah. You want a Jupiter mission tomorrow night. So I'm logged in as a Slooh member. I click the reservations button up here, and I'm logged in as a normal Slooh member. There's no admin or anything. So that's all my reservations tonight for these comets. I'm going to go over to tomorrow night, please. And literally, I can do this. I know I can do this without taking up too much of the show, because it's going to take up 2 minutes. And I know that Jupiter's going to be up after midnight, so I'm going to pick a slot after midnight. That one will do me, 0132. I'm going to choose an object from the list. And there's Jupiter. You can see all the other objects in there, Mon Crab Nebula, stuff like that. That's what Bob would pick. There you go, Jupiter. I have just saved there that at 1:30 tomorrow night, the telescope is going to Slooh just for me to Jupiter and take images for me. So isn't that cool and easy?
That's amazing.
There you go.
That's really amazing. It really makes people wonder why they should bother with a backyard telescope when you can use a bigger one from the convenience of your own home and not even have to bother with Los Angeles.
So
at the same time. But you've got Hergenrother. It makes a 7-year trip around the sun. We know it's going to come back in less than a decade. But C2012 J1, it's got a pretty long time to wait, 200 years, something like that. You mentioned, and it's a treat to get to see something that I'm not going to be alive again to see when it comes back again.
right.
But no, it's a great time. Not only do we have a lot of great stuff coming up. You mentioned the Hunter's Moon at the end of the month, and the Leonid meteor shower kicks off in the middle of November. The Taurids are next weekend, actually, not this one coming up, but next weekend. And then we've got that solar eclipse to cap the month of November, and then look to the December's a lunar eclipse too. So it's just every month, every few weeks, there's something going on up in the night sky to check out.
That's right, and then Slooh's always covering these events, guys. So if you come to the homepage, you can always see the next event counting down, and we do weekly, sometimes daily shows, and you can check it out anytime. So, but another way to get updated on this stuff is to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, or G+, circle us. Any of those tools, we do communicate when we're doing a live show using those avenues as well. So feel free to actually join those. And you can actually watch our shows on your mobile devices. So if you have an iPad, an iPhone, an Android device, you can actually see these broadcasts as well, in a more convenient setting. And on top of that, we will be releasing our iPad app soon, coming up near the end of November, and it's going to be a really cool app. I've been working on it quite a lot lately, and it's coming together nicely. So we're excited about that as well.
And don't forget about Tarek. That space.com. That's a very, very cool site. I like it a lot.
Awesome.
And I think that's a place where you go if you really want to get a lot of information about astronomy in a very easily accessible way.
Yeah, it's actually it opens up in a.
One of these great webcasts.
Yeah, in fact, some of these broadcasts are actually in space.com playing right now, so it's pretty cool. So, guys, we're down to our last 2 minutes. I just want to say thanks to Bob Bourbon again for joining us. He's always he's probably on 95% of all our broadcasts, if you haven't noticed. And I want to thank Paul Cox, Slooh Outreach Coordinator, for joining and helping us with the observatories. And I want to thank Tarek Malik, Managing Editor over at Space.com, for joining us as well. This was a fascinating event, and I want to thank Maynard, our Slooh member, who brought it to our attention that this was occurring, because we would have, so it's very easy for this stuff to slip through the cracks. So Slooh members, if you think there's something of interest out there, please make sure to share it with Paul, and we'll try to get it scheduled in. And the same goes to you, Tarek. Anything going out there in space that you're covering, let us know, of course, and we'll try to produce a live show around it. Any last thoughts, Bob, before we get off?
Well, I just think this was historic and cool that we actually saw it. We pulled it off. We did it. We saw two comets at the same time in the same field of view, passing each other in the night like ships in the night as they go through the solar system. And what a thing for Slooh to do, for the whole world to be able to see this. And it's also great. Paul Cox is just as good as they come. Tarek, it's just great to see you, too.
Great. And Bob, you're getting a lot of flack for your garbage call on Pluto, just so you know.
Well, you know what? We'll have to do a special show on Pluto, and then we can talk about it, and we'll see if people agree or disagree.
Yeah, I'm still in love with Pluto, so we'll have to have a talk about this later.
Okay.
All right, guys. Hey, Paul, do you have any last thoughts before the show? Looks like it's just ending on the Slooh.com homepage.
Yeah.
Paul,
I just wanted to share
thoughts?
with this graphic, which is really saying, it's illustrating what Tarek was saying. Tonight we've been looking at a periodic comet, which is Hergenrother, and that's the small blue circle that's going around, so you can see it orbits. It just goes outside the orbit of Jupiter. But here's the other one. Here's 2012 J1 Catalina, and it is now on its way out of the solar system once again on its huge orbital distance. So just thought I'd show people the difference between the two of those.
Oh, good. And you're changing the plane of the solar system so we can even see how it's oriented in different ways.
I am. I am in control of the solar system. If anybody is starting to feel sick, ask me to stop.
Yes, and I'm just kidding
That's
about
funny.
Pluto. I'm kidding about Pluto. I love Pluto.
Oh yeah, Bob. Yes. Now you come around. All right. So, Paul, are you going to do a show tonight or not? Because I don't. Are you doing one for
later,
sure?
later on, yeah, let's say I will. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So in
Well, Paul.
3.5 hours time.
All right. Well, Paul's going to go back on. Is that 0200? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah,
Or is that
200. So in no, that's four. It's 4.5 hours time, isn't it? So
something like that? Yeah.
have a look on the
Well, we'll
home
go ahead.
page. I will put it on the home page, and we'll get that. By the way, Tarek, if you ever do any stories that you think some live images would illustrate really well, we would love to do some shows for you, as well as inviting you onto shows. You know, it would be great just to be providing live images to kind of illustrate some of your stories. So that would be really cool.
Yeah, definitely. We'll keep that in mind, Paul.
Yeah.
All right, guys. For Slooh Space Camera, this is Patrick Palucci. Thanks for coming to the show. And the second show will be later tonight. It'll be counting down shortly on the homepage of Slooh, and that will be hosted by Paul Cox right there. Take care, guys. See ya.
Good night.
Good night, all.
And that's where I'll be monitoring for questions. I know some of you hang out in the Google Plus area of our page or the YouTube channel, which is fine. You can do that as well. But questions posted in that area, we can't monitor all those areas. So the Slooh conversation box on the slooh.com homepage is where questions will be answered at the time of watching this. So right now, Paul's working on these feeds. Bob, while we're getting started here, I just want to let them know that the weather in Canary Islands right now is not great. It's very high wind conditions, and unfortunately, we had to keep one of our observatories closed due to its past its limit. Although we were able to get what we call our T2 high mag scope up and running in these conditions. So that's what we're going to be looking at today with this live feed. Bob, why don't we talk more about comets in general to give people an idea of what comets are, and maybe you can differentiate that between an asteroid, and talk about the uniqueness of this event while we work on the feeds themselves for the broadcast.
Sure, Pat. There's two aspects. One is the gut, the visceral thing about comets, and the other is the science. Now, as we look and we see the comet live, one of the two comets, you know, if we get our wide field going, you'll see both of them in the same field of view, and that's what makes this event so special, because
Okay, Slooh Live show will begin in about 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Slooh show will begin in about 1 minute. 1 minute. Slooh Live show will begin in 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Hi everyone, this is Patrick Palucci. It's October 23rd, Tuesday, and we're here today to give you a live coverage of two comets that are converging in the night sky. I'm here today with the great longtime Slooh friend Bob Berman and Astronomy Magazine columnist, as well as outreach coordinator from Slooh, Paul Cox. We'll be providing a okay. Can you guys still hear me right? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Slooh Live show will begin in 3 minutes. 3 minutes and counting. A live feed of two comets that are actually in the same field of view. The comets are 168P Hergenrother and Comet C/2012 J1 Catalina. These two comets were actually been showing some brightness. The 168P Hergenrother has been tracked by Slooh members, and they one particular member, Maynard Pittendray, I hope I pronounced his last name right. Paul, do you know Maynard's last name? How do you pronounce it?
I believe that's right. I don't have the spelling in front of me, I'm afraid, Pat.
Okay,
yeah.
No problem. Well, Maynard, thank you very much. He brought this to our attention that these two comets were going to be coming in the same field of view, and that's a rarity. So what we're going to be doing today is Paul is actually robotically controlling our observatory in the Canary Islands. We'll be screen sharing in those images into the Hangout box here, but if you want to watch the program, you can actually watch it on Slooh.com. On the Slooh.com homepage, you can actually control the feeds of our observatories by clicking those little arrow boxes. You can pin photos right out of the reticle viewer, we call it, and you can also see the Google Plus Hangout box where we're all talking and conversing. So that's probably your best bet. We also have the Slooh Conversation box there as well.